Okay, gonna do a quick one here. I just got done adding the rear trailing arms with the metal support plates. I bought new arms and the support plates and threw those in, got those on. For those anybody that watched, yes, I did get the other shock. This other shock spring flipped around like I was going to. I forgot to do it while I was doing the vid. Got almost done, shut the vid down, looked and oh crap. Pop shock, I'll put it on. So what I'm going to do here is actually not to do with the Rift. It's just what I have handy. It has to do with the radio. This is the Radiolink V2 ARGHH radio. The V1s were out last year and a couple years ago, and then they just come out with V2 late last fall. I guess it was middle of last fall, late last fall. They come out with the V2 of the radio. And nice radio. This is what I'm going over here. It will, be for all of them. Looks like an old Spectrum from like the late 2000s, 2007, 2009, somewhere in there when the Specties first came out. It's got that look to it. I'm thinking about modding it. I'm going to move the antenna to the face and have it pointing downward, so I can, it swivels, but I'm going to put it so I can put it up front and point it downward if I have to, or I can spin it around and point it upward if I need to. Get it off the top anyways. It's got a mount for camera and stuff on it, but and a lot of people are familiar with them already to getting the thumb button as opposed to the other button up here. It helps. But one of the problems, ain't a problem. One of the things that it has is a nice battery telemetry system, an alarm system for your batteries. So when you power the radio up, and I don't know, hopefully this is going to give us some clarity here and not be too bad of a pain in the butt. Let me try to cut out some light and see if that helps. Cut out a little bit more light. Oh, that made her dark. Ain't that dark in here, but I got some shades kind of drawn a little bit. That's even worse. That's even worse. Wonder if I do this one first, see how that one is. God, that is just, can't even see it. I wonder if I can, I don't know if this actually has settings. To adjust the radio. I don't think it does. Like settings on the radio. I'll have to get into it a little bit more, but yeah, one thing I don't know if they got it different. Anyways, when you use the radio, this radio itself has a 6 AA pack in there, but it will run up to a 4S. So you can actually run a 2S, a 3S, or even a 4S transmitter pack in this radio. As you can see right here, I've got actually a 3S 11.1 volt 52 or 2500 3S pack in my transmitter. With a 4S pack, they claim 900 or 600 meters, which is 1,800 feet, which is damn near a quarter mile. I mean, not quite, but almost a quarter mile. So on 3S, it's probably 400 meters, so maybe 1,200 feet. So this thing's got incredible range. Even on the 6 AA batteries, it's going to be 1,000 feet, 800, 900 feet, which don't sound like much, but when you figure a football field's 300 foot, you can go 3 football fields away. That's quite a distance on an RC. So this thing's got really good, incredible range, and I haven't checked it for total distance. I've been 1/8 of a mile, and it's kept control. No quirks, almost no delay. You really can't tell. So when you turn the wheels 8 mile, it starts turning immediately. Like you turn the steering wheel here, and a couple seconds later, the car finally. No, man, it's pretty much right on. So one of the biggest things about this radio, though, that's nice, is it has a battery telemetry inspection on it. I'm gonna try. Let me see if I can do something different here. Maybe if I get a slightly different angle. I'm hoping we can maybe get, maybe that'll work once it went down. Yeah, see if I can do that. But the minute I hit the button, it's going to go back on. But you go through this unit, and it's got, as other people have shown on video, it's got a lot of different settings. But when you get to setting number 19, let me exit out of here. So you're at the home screen. It's just the main screen. You can look at it at the very top. You can't see this, unfortunately, even back here. I wish I could set the LCD background. I'd have to probably get some different side light to not be so bad. But anyways, at the very top, it tells you your model, whatever you name it, or model number 1 through 10. And then over on the right side of the very top of the screen, it will give you a number readout, and that's your voltage of your transmitter. Right now, I'm setting at 11.4 volts, so it won't be too long. And 11 point, no, actually, that's pretty charged. It's 3S, so it's actually good down to. I have my alarm set for 9.3 volts because 3.1 volts for cell. I say 3.3, so I could take it down to 10 volts. So I've got a long way to go actually before I have to charge this radio, and I've been using it quite a bit since the last charge, or pretty much the initial charge of this radio. I think I charged it once since. So you push and hold both buttons. Whoop. And you'll hear beep and boom. You get into the menu, and there's numbers 1 through 24, I think it is. 23. 23 is a full reset, so it resets everything. If you keep hitting the decline button from number 1, you get down to number 19. That's the alarm settings. And you're going to push the X or the enter button. You're going to go into your alarm. You're going to see at the top, it's going to read alarm. Of course, again, you can't see this, unfortunately. This thing's, I don't know how. I know some guys have got it, but this ain't exactly the greatest setup here for this kind of vid, and this camera is really kind of shitty, obviously. So you look at the alarm settings, and at the very top it says TX, and that's, of course, transmitter. And I've got it set for 9.3. If you want to change it, hit enter, increase or decline to whatever number you want. Like if you want to go to 9.9, take it up to 9.9, hit enter, it locks it at 9.9. Then when you increase, it goes down to the next one. That's EXT. That's your external battery pack. That's the battery pack that's on the rig, not necessarily a receiver pack, but the battery. So if you're running 2S, that's your 2S battery. If you're running 6S, that's your 6S battery. If you continue to hit the incline, it's got your RSSI, which has your RSSI settings that you can get into. And I haven't got into that much, and I don't know that there's a need for it for what I'm doing. If I have to get into it, I will. But that's set off by default. Go down one more, and it says RX setting. So this radio system will monitor an alarm on your transmitter battery. It will monitor an alarm on your external battery, whatever battery pack setup you're running in your rig. And it will external an alarm on your RX power. So if you're running a nitro, you've got a smaller battery pack running your nitro rig to run your servos and your receiver. A lot of times those are now a smaller 2S, maybe a lipo or a metal life. Sometimes some people still using AA pack cartridges. But anyways, when you get down to the TX, that's where you'll set that voltage. Now, for people running electric like I am, I used to have gassers and nitros, but I've pretty much got all electrics right now. I don't have any gassers or nitros, at least nothing on surface. So if you go to your RX setting, that's your receiver voltage. And you'll put enter, and you can change that. Now, if you're running a 4 AA's, empty AA is 0.9 volts. So 0.9 volts times 4 is 3.6 volts. You can take this down to 3.8 volts. And then at 3.8 volts, it will start beeping on you because your receiver, your battery pack, fully, 4 AA fully charged is 4.8 volts, but it's probably 5.1, 5.2 volts fully charged. And then it goes through, and drained out batteries are 3.6 volts. So you can adjust your receiver settings to when it hits whatever voltage it is. So if you're running a nitro or a gasser like a Baja or a Harm or FG on road or any of these larger gas rigs, some people putting Titan motors in their systems, this is what your receiver power pack setting would be. Now I'm running electric, and all electric rigs give 6 volts or give 7.2 depending on the internal BEC. So I'll set my receiver number, or if you're running electric, you can set that because it's coming, your battery's charging, powering up the EEC or the ESC, and the BEC in most ESCs are set for 6 volt or 7.2 volts. So if you've got your receiver settings on your ESC for 6 volts, so you're running 6 volts out of your unit through your receiver, you don't want to put this at 6 volts, because if you do, I've got it set at 5.9 right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to power up the Rift, but actually I've got to go to my models first, so because I changed a few things around. I was doing a few adjustments. There, now we're on the Rift. We'll exit out. So you hit your doubles, get in there. Well, and let me go ahead and power this up. Three S in there. Okay. Now we'll go decline to number 19, back to alarm, and we're on RX settings. So right now, nice and quiet, right? We're setting at 5.9 volts. I've got my BEC and the ESC is set at 6 volts. I haven't changed it from stock. This is a Spectrum Firma ESC in this, the stock 150 amp ESC. And they're set at 6 volts. I think you can change them to 7.2, but I haven't. So this is what's going to happen if you set your RX setting at 6 volts or higher on this, on any of these Radiolink setups. I push the button with 6 volts and it's bing, 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 bing. It's changed screens. You can't see it, sadly, but it's giving an RX power with 2 exclamation points, you know, telling you your RX power is low. And it's going to keep beeping. And it ain't going to stop beeping until you get back into that setting and change it. Here is the one quirk, besides the kind of bulky, clumsy radio box. It could have been a little better design. Here's the one quirk I do have, and the one, I'll say, flaw that's with this radio, is why that alarm's going off. Because when you hit the button, it beeps too. That time it works. Sometimes because if you don't hit the button at the right time, if you're hitting it in time with the beep, it's going to recognize the alarm beep. It's going to discard the beep from the button push, and it's not going to go into whatever you're trying to do. So, oops. Sometimes, see, I'm trying to push it and to get into the menu, and because that alarm's going off, it won't let me. There it is. There, I finally got it. You got to hit it at the right time. So until that alarm is changed, that's going to continue. You can kind of hear me beeping, beeping, beeping. But when I push the button, it just beeps through. It's because I'm hitting at the same time and it ain't moving. So it's hard to navigate the menu when the alarm's going off. And then turn down to 5.9 volts, bam, it's done. So if you're running an electric rig, the only thing I'm going through this for in a little detail, because it can be frustrating, especially when you're trying to get things set up and that alarm's going on, you're trying to navigate through the menu and the beep is stopping you from navigating through the menu. It can be very frustrating. So if you're running an electric rig and you have your BECs for your receiver set up at 6 volts, on the RX setting on your unit, on your alarm setting channel 9 or menu number 19 alarms, on the RX side, put that at 5.9 volts. If you have a BEC that is set for 7.2 volts, you don't want this any higher than 7.1 volts, because the minute you hit 7.2 volt, RX power, and it immediately takes you out of the menu. goes into an emergency menu, and you got to menu through between that beep. Yes, I have not gotten back in the menu because this thing is that there. Nope. Come on now. Of course, there's one other way of doing this, and just you shut your rig off. It'll stop. Now you can menu in. Pain in the butt. That's a major pain. So in your alarm settings, you want these settings right. On your RX alarm, which is like the fourth option down in your memory or your setup number 19, go into that. If you're running a BEC at 6 volts for your receiver, so you're running 6 volts to all your servos, set that at 6 volt or 5.9 volts or lower, because your BEC coming out of your ESC is always going to feed you 6 volts unless your ESC gets less than 6 volts and you're on a 2S lipo. If you're on over a 3S lipo or above, depending on your rig, it's always going to have at least 6 volts. So you want to set this right, or this thing's just not going to stop beeping. Now, once you've got that set on your RX setting, that's good to go. It's at 5.9 volts or 7.1 volt if you're running your ESC's BEC or your external BEC for your receiver at 7.2 volts. But a lot of times they're all stock at 6. So before you go running, when you set your models up, when you add a new model and go through your settings, you'll have to go into there and change these. And if you're going to run 7.2, make sure the RX setting is at 7.1 or lower. That alarm is going to trigger at 7.2 volts. Same thing if your BEC is at 6 volts. So on your receiver setting on the radio, that is just for the receiver. And if you're running an electric setup, then match it to what your BEC is. Again, if you're on nitro and gas, if you got a 2S lipo with a 6 volt BEC, you'll set that at 5.9 volts. Or set your BEC at 6.2 volts and set your radio setting at 6.1 volt. So when your batteries get low and it starts dropping at 6.1 volt, your system starts jumping. So that's the biggest thing on that. Now, once that's done, go up to your external setting, your EXT setting. Of course, you can't see it. Your EXT setting is your actual battery packs. And with this unit, if anybody's seen this, you've got this little piece that slides in between your ESC. It's a little, jumper piece. And it's got 2 wires that come out and plug directly in your receiver. And that's how it tells you what your battery pack power is. So it's got telemetry back to the radio, which is really cool. Your Spectrum Smarts have this. Nomadio had this option 10 years ago, and it gave you both your receiver and your transmitter power on the Nomadios. And they were the first ones to do it. Now, Futava's doing it, Shenhua, JR, Coproco, and Radiolink. $80 radio is got stuff in it like a $500 radio and goes damn near a quarter mile. I haven't even seen some of the Futavas get that far, and runs up to a 4S lipo. So you get back. Let's get back to the EXT. So the EXT setting is your external battery pack. If you're running 2S batteries and you want to make sure you have 3.3 volts at basically empty setting, you'll set your EXT setting at 6.9 volts. 2 cells, 3.3 volts each. I'm sorry, 6.6 volts. 2 cells, 3.3 volts each, 6.6 volts. If you got a 3S, then 9.9 volts. If you got a 4S, 12.2 volts. If you got a 6S, which is 12.2, 15.5, and then 6S, that's their 5S. 6S is going to be 18.7 volts at the lowest setting, 3.3 volts per setting. So you multiply that by your cells, and that's where you want to say, I'm okay with getting down to 3.1 volt per cell. 3 volts is where they're considered flat. I don't mind running down 3.1, even 3.2. 3.2 is generally where I go, give a little bit of headroom. So on my EXTs, I go, 3.2 volts per cell. So if I got a 2 cell setup, I'll set this at 6.4 volts. So when my 2 cells are pumped, hitting 6.4 volts coming out, it starts beeping. And now I know my battery pack is low. With this, I've got a 3S in it. I've got it set up right now at 9.3. I'm going to raise it actually to 9.6 because like I said, I generally have it at 3.2 volts per piece. And that's how you set it. So your RX setting is strictly for the receiver. Your Ext setting is strictly for the battery packs you're running. And it took me a few to figure this out, and they really don't say anything in the system. Of course, I kind of thought that's what it was, but every time I do something, I'd have beeps going off, and then have to fight with it to get back in the menu because the beep interrupts the menu setup because it beeps too, and the beeper can't recognize 2 beeps being input at the same time, so the one quirk. So like I say, and then of course the last one, the very first setting in that number 19 menu option is the transmitter setting. So again, you'll do the same thing. You'll set that up. If you've got 3S battery, which I've got it set actually the transmitter at 9.9 volts because I don't want that getting problem and flaming up while it's in my hands and I've got my rig out running. So I let my transmitter packs go off at 3.3 volts per cell, 3 cells, 9.9 volts. If you want to go, 3.5 volts and 11.5, but that's almost half charged, so I use 3.3 volts on the transmitter. So you just scroll the incline or decline to those numbers, push enter up and down to the value you want. Again, if it's 2S on your transmitter pack, go down to 6.4 volts, 6.6 volts, set it and go. And that's how you keep the radio nice and quiet. And the beeper now is only going to go off, and I don't have a low battery right now to plug in to show you, but the beeper is only going to be going off when your receiver, when your external battery packs is seeing that low, unless again you're running a gas or nitro, and in that case you'll want to turn around and set that receiver pack alarm pack voltage accordingly. Not going on, kind of getting pinched up here a bit. Oh, I guess maybe that's just all. Oh, that's what it was. I know, on the other side. So that's it. I just want to kind of go over that. This transmitter is, like I say, very, very annoying when that alarm starts going off because it's hard to navigate through. So receiver setting, menu options, number 19. Go into that option. That's your alarm menu. Set your TX setting for whatever pack you have in your transmitter, 2S, 6.6, 6.2, whatever. Your EXT setting is your external battery pack on your rig, and then your receiver setting is what you're getting actually out of on your receiver. And that's what was confusing me a little bit because it was going off, the EXT was going off, and what the heck? So that's because of the BEC and the ESC, that's what's powering the receiver. So that's it. I just want to kind of go over that. If anybody's having questions, we'll talk to you later. Bye. Gotta hit that one too.